obviously once this technology is implemented, it'll change the world. You know, everyone has seen that. So let's go back real quick before we move on to kind of the domino effect that this will create in society. Let's move back a little bit, back into what it was like 8 years failing and then quitting, you know, and then you couldn't get it out of your head. Was it just like a light bulb went off? Was it a gradual thing? Or tell us about that process of like.
Well, the 8 years was grueling. I can tell you.
You sacrificed millions of, like literally $1 million.
Yeah, and I probably could have made money on that, but I didn't care about that. It was grueling failing. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, what do I do now? You know, and I don't mean that, what do I do for a project? I'm talking about where do I go? Because I knew water was the solution. You know, it's the most powerful energy source on the planet. It's the most constant energy source on the planet. It's the only way we'll be able to create energy in the future. We know dams really don't work. The philosophy behind dams, I know they're the best alternative right now, but it doesn't work. It doesn't even come close to what I've invented. Not even close. So, matter of fact, they'll all get shut down too. The only reason they'll be around is for water preservation, etc. They won't be generating power out of them and tearing up fish and stuff through their turbines. They'll take the turbines out and they'll use it to. There's still good uses sometimes for dams. It's to preserve water because so the water can be released slowly for communities. You know, so the next 2 years was pretty cool. I actually, when I failed and when I found a discovery, I couldn't believe it. So truly, I sent it to my son.
Who's an engineer?
Engineer, mechanical engineer and civil engineer. And I told him the idea and he said, "You're crazy." Seriously. And I thought, no, I'm not crazy, but maybe I am, you know, because he's pretty smart, you know. He wasn't young. So I kept looking at it for a couple of weeks and he did too. And he called me a couple of weeks later and he said, "Dad, it'll work. Sounds crazy, but it'll work." So then the two of us did the calculations. And another week later, we call each other and we come up, well, we were within 15% of one another. And he went, "Oh my God, this makes sense." Well, after that, I spent another year working on it before I ever told anybody about anything. It sounds a little crazy, but I wanted to make sure. And you know, I am the type of person, because I worked in that think tank environment, I'll work on something until someone tells me to quit. Because that's what you do. You think you have a solution and then you work and you think and then you keep working on it. So, a couple months later, I come up with a pretty cool idea that I could transform this and I could distribute it in more places, okay? And it could be used differently than what I was anticipating. So that was cool. So I made that transformation with all the engineering and everything, a lot of work, and I can tell you guys 2 or 3 months of work. So then pretty soon I come up with another idea that could transform it more. This time it could be distributed in cold weather. So now the distribution to this is not only in the middle part of the planet, but now I can distribute this in the northern part of the climate. I can install this in Moscow. And it will operate very similar to what it does in the warmer climate. It takes more work and it's more costly, but it works. But it isn't that much more. The cost may be 10 or 20% more. But now,
to today's energy cost, it's nothing, right?
Well, I believe that I'll generate energy for $180 million a gigawatt. That means I can replace the Hoover Dam for $360 million.
So talk to them about what would that do for the cost of energy for the average person? What is that?
Well, think of the nuclear plant being replaced for $360 million without any feedstocks. So that's a one-time cost without any nuclear waste, and the maintenance budget 10% of what it would be. And imagine being able to do that in a million places around the world. Now, I do have a disclaimer. I could be off on my cost, the $180 million for a gigawatt, because that's an order of magnitude. But if it costs $300 million a gigawatt, it would be a miracle. So at $180 million, it's a double miracle. And I mean miracle. And when I say miracle, 10–20% of the cost of electricity today. Now think about almost unlimited energy around the planet for 10 to 20% of the cost today. And by the way, it can also power vehicles, not electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles. And we'll get into that in just a little bit here.
Wow. So 10 to 20, so you're saying you could potentially knock down the cost of energy by 80–90%?
Well, the upstream cost to it. Wow. Remember, there's a downstream cost. which means the grids, the electric line. But I also know that I can simplify the electric grids. There'll be no more wide area network grids that are necessary. This thing could be distributed in enough places, they'll all be almost local grids, which simplifies the electric grids in our country a huge amount too. Similar to this, about 50, 60, 70% of the cost is for long distance grids. And they lose a lot of electricity through line losses. That would all go away. And by the way, because it can be distributed in so many places, the expandability to this is enormous. Where you needed energy, it can just go anywhere you want. The backup capabilities, we can overlap them, so we have pure backup capabilities. So now you can't have one energy source without being 100% reliable. I can help show them how to implement this 100% reliable. That means there's no need for any other energy at all.